Content warning, y'all. We have lots of fun making this podcast, but remember, we watch a lot of R-rated films, use language that reflects that, and joke about heavy topics to create levity around these themes. If that doesn't feel safe or could be triggering, please take care of yourself. We want you to have fun listening too. This also means we might not be suitable for children. Oh yeah, and we spoil the end of all the movies we pod about. Thanks for listening.
I looked it up because I was curious. According to Val Kilmer and Fred Ward's Wikipedia, both are Cherokee.
Why do you know that about Fred Ward?
Yeah, Fred Ward's it does not list, I don't think, anything other than it says.
I saw the Val Kilmer says he's an eighth.
Yeah, I know. Fred Ward, he was. Fred was born in San Diego. He was part Cherokee. His father was an alcoholic criminal who was repeatedly imprisoned, and his mother left him when Fred was 3. And then I don't think it says anything else about his family. So I don't know. I don't know if he actually is Cherokee or what. But it's the only thing that's listed for his
specifics.
There's literally no other specifics. So that's interesting. Val Kilmer's, is like his grandma was Cherokee, which I'm like, oh Lord, I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's possible, but it's so hard to believe people when they say that their distant family is Cherokee. And I mean, I get a little bit like, if you're like, oh, I'm indigenous, or you're like, oh, I'm Native American, and you're like, oh, what tribe do you belong to? And someone's like, oh, my grandma was, and you're like, oh, fuck. And then they say something like Navajo, Cherokee, I'm like, okay, like those are the most well known. Like, I'd believe Navajo over Cherokee because Navajo is probably the largest or one of the largest, but I'm still like, is that just the only ones
Right.
There's a lot of anyway, whatever. Cherokee is just so easy for people to think about. Also, Cherokee supposedly have really they have records. A lot of and they are able to tell you, if you inquire, the Cherokee are one of the best record keepers or something really? That. And so if you claim Cherokee and you have no claim to it, they'll be able to tell you. If they're like, oh, you're Cherokee, who's Cherokee? And you're like, my grandma, they'll be like, she wasn't.
Nope.
Incorrect. So, I mean,
Did I talk about this on Mike? That the dude from Prey?
Prey?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that he, one of the tribes that he claimed said, couldn't find any record of him, and he was
yeah.
like, oops.
Yeah.
But see, I think that's, more understandable because he's actually indigenous, and, I think that's something where...
Yeah.
No, it can get, I will say it can get tricky because blood quantum is is really problematic.
Yep.
And there's a lot of white supremacy involved in it.
Yep.
And also keeping the race pure kind of shit, that's, and it's meant to discourage sort of like anything that's like anything interracial, not just with white people, but like any other what is considered any other race, which is problematic, and that doesn't do anything. And like it's something, it is what it is, and it's weird. Like, yeah. Anyway, but
I mean, it's also that, like, one of the reasons we're here is because of genocide.
Yeah.
And forced relocation.
Right.
And so, like, of course there's not going to be records.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
If you're not.
Right.
If it's. If, he's going to get you killed. A lot of people are going to.
Right, yeah. Which is, and there's like a lot of.
grandmas.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things that are like, some people like, like blood quantum can be problematic because it's like you can be full blood native, but you can have like lots of different, tribes, and nothing's a specific, and you don't have any claim to any specific amount, but you're like dark skinned, or you don't pass as white. No one thinks you're white, but you have no claim to anything.
Right.
And like that's like that's so fucked up, that you can be like kind of like ostracized sort of within your own community because like you don't have quote enough, and so like it's really problematic. Yeah, I want to learn more about stuff. I don't want to say it's hard to learn about stuff, but like it's indigeneity is not a monolith. There's not, tribes have different beliefs, different natives have different beliefs. You have people like Jacqueline Keeler who are out to accuse people of being pretendians and cause a lot of damage within the community.
And just presumably for their own.
Yeah, for no reason other than, and like their claim is that it's, for like.
Psych.
We could do this tomorrow if you'd rather. Anyway.
It's fine.
So Keith had a sour cream, or he had. What had happened was, no, we don't know what happened. He's just, his body's attacking him currently.
Oh, yeah, it's trying to
choke him to death.
What's it called when it? Oh, it's like when it rejects an organ. It's just rejecting.
It's called rejecting an organ.
Rebuffing. And organs advances.
His body is angry that he has a throat.
A wonderland. Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
Mm-hmm.
This movie is not what I thought it was going to be.
Truly, yeah, it definitely wasn't. It was. It's what I liked about it was that it was sort of taking. It took like sort of the true. Or not, it took from real things that happened at Wounded Knee in the 70s.
Pine Ridge
Reservation.
What
I didn't like about it is that it
is a Hollywood movie.
It did.
Yeah, right. It's weird.
Yeah, it's like it's cool that they did that, but they also like did a white savior version of that.
Yeah,
and so it's like, I mean, like. So the footage that was used at the beginning when he was saying like that was actual footage from I think Pine Ridge, or something.
It was from. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're fine.
I'll look it up.
It was actual footage from
correct of a protest because some white dude had murdered a native person, and their charge had been brought down from murder to second-degree manslaughter.
Ugh.
So understandably, people were like, fuck that.
I think Fred Ward's, if I'm not wrong, I think Fred Ward's character was supposed to be based on the guy who, like the reason for Wounded Knee is basically hang on, I'm going to Wikipedia it so that I'm not like fucking up and using the wrong language. Sorry that I'm using Wikipedia also because I know that it's, not the best, but it's like, it's really hard to find.
I mean, I understand the criticisms of Wikipedia, but guess what? Encyclopedias are,
right, yeah.
and most of history is.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not looking for a specific, like, I'll be honest, I didn't have much, this is all just like day after looking all this stuff up, so.
Oh, well.
The Wounded Knee occupation, also known as Second Wounded Knee, began on February 27, 1973, when approximately 200 Oglala Lakota, sometimes referred to as Oglala Sioux, and followers of the American Indian movement seized and occupied the town of Wounded Knee, South Dakota, United States, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. The protest followed the failure of an effort of the Oglala Sioux Civil Rights Organization to impeach tribal president Richard Wilson, whom they accused of corruption and abuse of opponents. Additionally, protesters criticized the United States government's failure to fulfill treaties with Native American people and demanded the reopening of treaty negotiations to hopefully arrive at a fair and equitable treatment of Native Americans. LOL. Yeah.
Editor's note, LOL.
Oglala and AIM activists controlled the town for 71 days while the United States Marshal Service, FBI agents, and other law enforcement agencies cordoned off the area. The activists chose the site of the 1890 Wounded Knee massacre for its symbolic value. In March, a U.S. Marshal was shot by gunfire coming from the town, which ultimately resulted in paralysis. A member of the Cherokee tribe and a member of the Oglala were both killed by shootings in April 1973. Ray Robinson, a civil rights... anyway. I don't need to read the whole thing. But anyway. Apparently the screenwriter for this movie lived on
Pine Ridge.
At Pine Ridge for 5 years.
Yeah.
I will say kind of annoying. Don't ask a native person to write this.
Correct. Yeah.
Go study native culture for several years.
Agreed. Also, this is wild. Mm-hmm. Mike Apted that directed this movie.
Yeah.
Also directed and released the same year Incident at Oglala, which is about the real events.
Oh, wow.
And it's a documentary.
Okay.
And specifically about Leonard Peltier.
Oh, wow.
He was already working on that when someone sent him the script for this. And he's like,
wow.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
This is wild.
Yeah.
Sure. I'll do it.
I will say there's some like sort of like... I'm not the person, I don't know a lot about folklore and mysticism in Native American culture. I really don't. I know that there's there's certain things you're not supposed to look at the moon or an owl, even in images. And that's I think that might be Navajo, it's different things but that's not universal, and it's not, there's lots of different sort of traditions and superstitions and stuff like that. But I would say the most annoying thing about this is the weird mysticism that they try to do. I'm we really could have done without it, especially considering that it was based on real events.
Correct.
We're not making up a story about this. We're it's literally being drawn from historical accounts.
Right.
Yeah, it did. What was interesting about this is that they actually used indigenous actors. And I'm going to say this, I'm not saying they did a great job of this, but the fact that Fred Ward and Val Kilmer even claimed to be indigenous, that is more than what I expected.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that when watching it, honestly.
Correct. Same. I looked it up.
Not terribly surprised by either, but I didn't know it.
And I was because I was looking at Fred Ward, and I was like, I really wonder, because there's just some, and it's one of those things where you can't tell by looking at someone. You can say you can tell, but you can't really tell. And there have been times that I'm there's no way. I was very convinced that Tegan and Sarah were not white, and Tegan and Sarah are white. But yeah, like, you know, you can't really tell by looking at someone. So I was just curious. I was curious if they picked him because he could, you know, like visually someone might say like he looked indigenous, or if, you know, so I was like looking up. Also, Val Kilmer has lips. So I was like, I wonder.
He sure does.
Yeah, I know. I often am curious. Like I do want to know though, like if that is accurate, if Val Kilmer really is Cherokee, because you can be Cherokee, but it's like the thing that was
no one's actually Cherokee.
Oh well, that's fair. That's fair. With one thing. So the movie starts basically with Val Kilmer being asked, like, basically being like, hey, we know that you're indigenous, so you should go, like, do this thing
We choose
on
you.
on a tribe, you know, on tribal land, because they don't like outsiders. And he's like, I don't think I'm the person for this. And it's like, it's so accurate to the thing of like someone being like, "Oh, you're indigenous. Come help with this thing." And it's like, I don't know. You know?
Well, especially how much they emphasize he has no connection to that.
Correct. Yes.
And he's very, especially when he meets up with Sam Shepard and they're driving through the reservation, and he's clearly like just disgusted and wants no part of it. And he's like, that's not my people. And,
Yeah.
which, you know, is needed structurally for his character growth, but it's also works. I mean, it rings true, you know, like it's easy to imagine someone who has made the choices that led to being an FBI agent.
Correct. Yeah.
Also, not wanting to have any connection to
crazy
that part of their history.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
I do appreciate that, like you said, that scene is like the first scene, really, with any dialogue. And it really sets the tone that, like, there's no... I mean, I think by today's standards, it feels ambiguous in a weird way.
Right.
But the FBI at no point seem heroic or...
Yeah.
Like, I like that it starts with that scene because you're like, okay, this is very clearly...
I was like, man, I hope the FBI aren't supposed to be good guys in this movie,
I know.
because they look like monsters right now. And if they're supposed to be the good guys, like, barf. And so by the end of it, I was like, oh, thank fucking God.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. That there's no real surprise about that.
Yeah.
But at the same, like, on the same token, it's like weird that we're still getting that POV, you know? I mean, it's so we have...
Is it?
It's so we have Lavoie's character arc, but...
Right.
It's weird. It's kind of icky.
Yeah.
A way to do it, but...
Yeah, I mean, like, I it's interesting because I think I wish that it centered more on reconnecting as opposed to it seeming like Lavoie is going, like, what seems to be happening in the movie is he's like, I don't want any part of you people. I'm not one of you people. And they're like, yes, you are. Come to our side. You know, there's a lot of like, you just have to, you know, like, open yourself up, you know, to being more like and I'm like,
sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, he gets like, a lot of shit as well.
Yeah. But like, it's like, I feel like, you know, they're like, oh, you know, like, come see this guy, come see that guy, like, go hang out with this guy. And he's just like so irritated with everyone. And I'm like, and, you know, they're like, oh, we know you're an outsider or whatever. And like, but like at the same time, they're like, you know, I don't know. It felt like there was a little bit too much of them being like, of the, people in the tribe being like, it's okay, like, you really are one of us, kind of thing. Like, they're like inviting.
Yeah, it feels like it happens a little too quickly.
Too quickly for how shitty he is in the beginning.
Yes.
He is like trying to beat the shit out of Graham Greene like immediately. He's just like,
yes.
I mean, horrible. He like interrupts sweat lodge ceremony and is just like so fucking shitty to everyone. And then the old man from that is like, oh yeah, come hang out with me, we're best friends. And I'm like, no, that's not. no one's gonna look at a cop who has completely disowned like that part of his life and be like, it's okay, you'll see our side eventually.
Well, Grandpa Reach, as soon as he sees him, he recognizes him from a vision. So
exactly, I'm like, come on, we don't need to do that shit. So yeah, like there's some stuff like that where I'm like, oh. Mainly my complaint is like that he's so much of an asshole right away.
Yes.
And like I think that they're trying to do that so that you don't assume Sam Shepard is the piece of shit that he is so quickly. Because Sam Shepard, and maybe this is just my perception of him, I love Sam Shepard because he has those snaggle teeth, and I know that sounds like I'm mocking him. I'm not. I adore when people in Hollywood don't fix their teeth because that shit is like so rare and amazing, and I don't know, I enjoy his face because of his teeth. But like he does come off like Sam Shepard usually plays like someone that's kind of smarmy and gross, and like so you have that assumption going in that he's going to be, that you don't necessarily trust him. And so I think they make Val Kilmer act so bad so that you don't just assume Sam Shepard is the piece of shit, but like he just seems like such a piece of shit right away. I was like, there's no way he's going to be a good guy in this. He's just such a piece of shit, Because he can't, like, this was the thing I didn't understand about his character. He would be like, like when they first interact with Graham Greene, like Val Kilmer just like takes him and he's like slamming him on the ground, like hitting him in the head and like doing all this shit.
Federal officer, hands on your head. Do it. Come back to cover your tracks, pal.
Leo's been out here too long, man. I'm taking him to ceremonial burial.
It's a restricted area, Geronimo.
This is Indian land.
What's your name? Hey, easy, Sal.
Sure as hell ain't Geronimo, Chief. I think maybe you guys got off the wrong exit, yeah? You looking for Mount Rushmore?
What's your name?
I'm a full-blooded Oglala Sioux, born and raised on this reservation.
Murder suspect and you're under arrest. Now answer my fucking question. Who are you?
He's a fucking cop, is what he is.
A fucking cop?
Yep, Walter Crowhorse, Tribal Police.
Shit.
Sorry about that, Walter. He's new on the block, kind of gung-ho.
And then Sam Shepard's like, yeah, he's a little overzealous. And I'm like, dude, you were right there with him. Like, he keeps being like, go ahead, get him. And then, like, when it's discovered that, like, he shouldn't be getting him, Sam Shepard's just like, yeah, this guy, he's new. And I'm like, you're encouraging him. You're telling him to do it. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, it's like he like wouldn't be, he'd be like, all right, you can calm down, but he doesn't actually do anything to stop him. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So, like, that was kind of confusing.
Yes. Also that, then Graham Greene.
Yeah.
He was like, whatever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Graham Greene is amazing, though.
Oh, he fucking rules in this movie. He's such a badass.
I love Graham Greene so much. Okay.
Good Lord.
I'm going to read this, though, because this, I think, is interesting. Wilson stayed in office and in 1974 was reelected amid charges of intimidation, voter fraud, and other abuses. The rate of violence climbed on the reservation as conflict opened between political factions in the following 3 years. Residents accused Wilson's private militia, Guardians of the Oglala Nation, Goons, of much of it. According to AIM, there were 64 unsolved murders during those years, including opponents of the tribal government, such as Pedro Bisonet, director of the Oglala Sioux Civil Rights Organization. However, this is disputed, with an FBI report in 2000 concluding that there were only 4 unsolved murders and that many of the deaths listed weren't homicides or political.
Okay.
Which I feel...
I guess I'll side. I guess I'll go with
Right.
what the FBI says.
I feel like there's an interesting part. I can't remember. I gotta look up her character's name. Maggie? Was it Maggie?
Yeah.
It's always Maggie.
Maggie Eagle Bearer or something.
Yeah. Her character... Oh, my God. My phone will go so slow sometimes, and then I don't realize that I've hit the buttons 17 fucking times, and then...
I can't find a credit for the grandma.
Yeah. Maggie Eagle Bear. Okay. No, not taglines.
Anna Aquash, who she's maybe based on,
Oh, okay, let me see.
I think.
Maggie, yeah, Anna Mae Aquash, who was at one point the highest ranking woman in AIM. She was murdered in 1975. But yeah, her the Maggie's character in the film is based on her. And at some point, Val Kilmer is like talking about like, I don't know, how he's trying to solve a murder, and she's like, "Oh, okay." And she grabs like a whole like a stack of files, and she's like, "Here, these are all the unsolved murders that have happened here." And then she grabs one of the files and she's like, "Sorry, this one doesn't belong here."
Do your job. 61 traditionals and armed supporters who were murdered and never investigated. Oh, you don't want this one. This is a suicide. Somehow he managed to shoot himself in the back of the head.
And I was like, so like shit like that, I don't know. I think that's like interesting. Because I think that yeah, there's like ways that this movie was actually kind of surprising. I'm not saying it was like, this was like amazing or like this was really well done. Instead of AIM though, they say ARM.
Yeah.
And like the AIM, I believe the AIM, what's it called?
Like logo?
Logo, yeah, thanks. It's just like a circle with a feather through the middle. And like the arm is like a circle with a feather like upside, like going down. Yeah, anyway. I was like, wow. Yeah, so there was like things like that where they didn't, but they use like actual... Oh, another thing. Hold on. Ugh, this is interesting. Sorry. Okay. The occupation, I'm reading it all in bits and pieces, so it's not, whatever. The occupation attracted wide media coverage, especially after the press accompanied 2 U.S. senators from South Dakota to Wounded Knee. The events electrified Native Americans, and many Native American supporters traveled to Wounded Knee to join the protest. At the time, there was widespread public sympathy for the goals of the occupation, as Americans were becoming more aware of longstanding issues of injustice related to Natives. Afterward, AIM leaders Dennis Banks and Russell Means were indicted on charges related to the events, but their 1974 case was dismissed by the federal court for prosecutorial misconduct, a decision upheld on appeal. Russell Means is an actor. I think Russell Means is... he died, but he was an activist, but he was an actor. He was in The Last of the Mohicans, playing Chingachgook in The Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I think, like, what's interesting, though, is, like, that they do use, like, activists, like, actual like activists in...
I just love how, except for Atanajawa, like John Trudel's in every one of these movies we watch.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just wish, like, my only complaint about this, well, not my only complaint, obviously, But my main complaint about this is that they really skirt around what it's actually talking about, and there's no actual like references to things, and they kind of just like make it about like this one murder that happens, and all, but also like they do really interesting stuff, like the person who murders, you know, like they're trying to solve a specific murder like on the reservation, and the person who actually committed the murder, like Val Kilmer confronts him and he's like, what do you fucking want from me, man? He's like, I did what, he's like, the FBI asked me, he's like, y'all came in and asked me to do this.
Right.
And I loved how he says it, because he's like, if I don't do it, then I have to, then I'm getting threatened, you know, that I get thrown back in jail. If I do it, then I get thrown back in jail. He's like, I can't win. He's like, I'm doing everything I'm being asked. And like, nothing's, you know, like, I'm not getting anything. He's like, I don't know what the fuck you want from me.
What is it with you people, man? I get thrown in an isolation unit until I don't know my own fucking name.
Get up.
And then you people tell me I can be 20 years if I helped you. Well, I helped you. The arms is gone, man.
Get up!
They said I'd never see FBI again. And I'm living with you fucking scum. What is it you want now? I don't feed your information on the arm. It's back to the pen. If I don't get the boys to make trouble, it's back to the pen. It's your word against my word. Against the Con Indians' word.
Violated parole, Richard.
What the fuck, man? What do you people want from me? I did what you Washijus told me to do.
You blew it, Richard.
Yeah, I blew his back out with your fucking hardware. I'm not going back, man.
All right.
For me. And I was like, I love this because this is perfectly talking about like corruption, but it's talking about it in the sense that like you like it's you know, an indigenous man who murdered another indigenous man, and you're still like, oh, it's not his fault, because he was put in a position there was no way out, and he was forced to do this. And so I appreciated that it was like, it was not painted as like he's the villain of this story, he's the bad guy. It's like he was part of all of this corruption. He was caught in it and he had no way out. And I'm like, that's such a good way to like talk about it without talking about it. Like you're explaining, he was like, I used your weapon. I used, you know, and I was like, whoa, man. Like it was just like really, I liked how that like kind of got unveiled. I was like, I don't want to say it was surprising. I wasn't like surprised. But yeah, it was just like, it was an interesting reveal of who the like murderer was. And the fact that like in the end, like Val Kilmer's not an FBI agent anymore.
Right.
And like you don't necessarily know what happened.
Yep.
So I did kind of appreciate the ambiguity of that, because it just means that like, you know, yeah, it means like you don't actually know what happened, you know, and that's sort of the reality of it all.
Okay, we're going to take a break real quick. Be right back. Also interesting to me to consider the context of like, when did this come out? 92?
Yeah.
Like JFK had come out the year before.
Wow.
So I feel like this was an era of the Oliver Stone era.
Yeah.
But so it's a little disappointing it doesn't go a little harder in that regard.
Yeah.
It feels like it wants to kind of have it both ways. And I guess that's just, I'll chalk it up to the fact that it was written and directed by white dudes.
Right, yeah.
You know, like that they think they need to have.
Right. It probably felt a lot more hard-hitting than it actually was, because they didn't know any of this stuff going in.
What do you mean?
Like, you know, like these people, well, not they didn't know any of this stuff going into the movie, but like this wasn't prior knowledge. Like they learned about this and we're like, oh, we should do something about this as white people.
Well, the director did because he did a documentary.
No, I know.
Okay.
I'm saying like I knew about shit like this from childhood because I'm indigenous. I'm saying like I grew up knowing this shit. I grew up knowing that the government, works against Native people. It wasn't a hard-hitting piece for me. It wasn't like shocking news. Obviously, they knew it before the movie because like they spent time on, like the writer spent time on the reservation. I'm just saying like before learning about this incident, they probably didn't know of this as being a thing.
Yeah, maybe.
And like to write about it and to make it present day. And to not reference Wounded Knee, to not reference any of this shit. I'm like, why? Why are you doing that?
Yeah,
like,
it's a little confusing in that regard.
I'd actually be interested to see something about Wounded Knee, about, and I think it would be vastly more interesting if it tried to tell like a more biographical story of the events that happened there. I mean, maybe,
Well, and again, as it's becoming evident, I think Powwow Highway is my favorite of this month's viewing.
Yeah, same.
Well, Atanajarat.
Yeah, that one
is its own.
Yeah. I feel about Atanajarat I feel like it's almost like a documentary. I feel like it's separate from
Right. Yeah, it feels like
because it just is so
an orange in this crate of apples.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
But while way more fictional, like the references in Powwow Highway, like they refer to Wounded Knee, they refer to Leonard Peltier.
Yeah, they named this shit, and
that's because they're not. It's not a fictionalized account of real things.
Yeah.
So you can do that, I guess, but.
That's what I was thinking last night. I was like, damn, who knew that Powwow Highway was the one that went the hardest?
For real.
They really did it. I mean, and they're like, but with them, it's like they're literally like, A. Martinez is literally wearing like an AIM shirt in the whole thing. And like, not the whole thing, but like, like you see it.
Movie,
he talks about AIM. They talk about like, and that's like, yeah, I was like, I think because I think if we hadn't watched Powwow Highway, I would be like, oh wow, this is really.
But if we watched this first,
yeah, I'd be like, oh okay,
earlier, yeah.
But like because Powwow Highway is like not even. It's just a road trip movie, and they're like Leonard Peltier, Wounded Knee, like talking about all this shit, and talking about like reconnecting and like what like. The colonization and white.
How they're all vets. Like a lot of them are vets.
And in this movie, I feel like they didn't really touch on like it was like they did a lot of like government versus traditional. They kept saying like traditional
traditionalists
versus
pro-government.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, we're not going to talk about colonization. We're not going to talk about white people. We're not going to talk about any of that. We're not going to talk about like none of that gets talked about.
That's why it's the whole thing is very much a white lens.
Yeah, right.
Which is confusing.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm like it's not that it's bad. It's just that it's like skewed. You're like you were trying and it wasn't that you failed. It's just like it's like it feels like Val Kilmer's character is like indigenous, quote unquote. I'm doing quotes. Obviously, you can see like indigenous, through, like happenstance almost. Like he just happens to be like the only indigenous person, or the only Sioux person in the FBI.
Right.
And so they're like, okay, you're going. But like, they're not addressing like, the fact that like not being connected to your own culture is not that different from like if you're not like you didn't grow up on the res, you didn't grow up around the res, you didn't grow up with anybody who is indigenous, you didn't grow up around them, you have worked your whole life to get away from that. Just going to a reservation is not going to awaken the indigenous blood in your body. Like that's not how it works. It's like you're saying, like what you were saying, like if you've done that much work to be that far
Right.
away from like your own culture, like going and visiting them, like you're not going to be welcome. But it's also like blood isn't fucking magical. Like,
Well, tell that to Grandpa Reach.
blood isn't magical. Like, blood quantum doesn't really have anything to do with anything. It's like, it's about like where you come from and how much you want to reconnect and to decolonize and to, and what reconnection means is also not a monolith, because how you need to reconnect might not be the same as how I need to reconnect or whatever, like I want to learn the language. Like, I'm really interested in learning the language of my tribe. But some people know their language,
Right.
but they don't know their traditions, or they haven't worked, they've really done a lot of work to ignore their traditions or to try to,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
doesn't mean that they don't need to reconnect,
Like, that's one of the great or interesting things in Powwow Highway.
Yes.
Is A. Martinez character,
Correct.
like, he's very, like, dismissive when they go to the powwows and stuff until
Graham
Greene calls him out. But
Yeah. Right. And that's what
he's on the tribal council.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
he lives on the
Right.
reservation.
Right. And like, that's the thing. Like it's not like the frustrating thing is like having native blood, quote unquote, isn't a pass. Like,
Right.
it doesn't mean that you can do things that are problematic or offensive or fucked up or hurtful. And it doesn't count because you have native blood. Like, if you don't know the ceremonies, like, I can't fucking go to the Shawnee tribe and just start dancing.
That
Like-
those red blood cells will kick in. Wow. Okay, that was an unfortunate coincidence. Or was it?
What were you trying to say?
I just meant blood cells.
Yeah. Good one.
But I like that, of the choices, there's red and white. So
It's true. Yeah, no.
those
yeah.
are also your choices,
Yeah,
personally, on a personal, individual level.
it's true. So.
Sorry, Native America.
Yeah, we know. But yeah, like, I can't just like, I mean, like, I can, but like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't just like go up there and be like, no, I'll take over. I'll be the
I got
judge.
this.
I'll be the judge of this dance contest, because like, no, that's not, because I know my tribe, just because I know where they exist and where they live and that shit. And just because I want to reconnect doesn't mean I walk up there and I have all the rights to everybody's business. Like, that's not how that fucking works. Like, I would still have to build trust. I would still have to, have deep discussions with people, and hope that I could be invited to, ceremonies and things like that. But you can't assume that just because I'm, I didn't grow up around them, around
Right.
my tribe. I didn't grow up around them. So like, yes, I know where my tribe lives. Yes, I know where they exist. Yes, I know the address of the
P.O. box for the...
yeah, I know that, of course. But like, not by heart, but I can find it.
What is it, Miami, Oklahoma? Shout out.
Yeah, shout out.
So we're here in Miami, Oklahoma.
So yeah, but my point is like, you don't just get like, it's not magic. It's not fucking magic. And it's frustrating when like there's that sort of, that is like what feels like a white lens of like,
Right.
when you look at someone and someone's like, oh, I'm indigenous. And so white people are like, oh, so you know all this stuff then. So you know everything. You're, like you, no, I'm saying I have to reconnect. I'm working on decolonization. I've just started using the term two-spirit because I felt really uncomfortable using it, not because it didn't match how I felt, but I didn't want to come across as like a pretendian,
Yeah.
Being like, I am two-spirit because I feel like there's two spirits inside me. Like, it's just like,
One is two wolves.
one is two wolves and the other is is...
Two Kevins.
Anyway, yeah.
Two Kyles.
Would you recommend this movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, if you want an entry into the real life events,
right.
It's not bad for that. I mean, it's not great for that, but as an entry point, it's good.
Yeah.
Enough. Graham Greene alone is enough.
So good. I know.
I did love Grandpa Reach.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Thin Elk. Mm-hmm. This is his first film. He was 72.
Jesus Christ, he wasn't 100?
No. So it's not possible he was at Wounded Knee the first time. That's another thing that's weird about the film for me is it seems like it's set in the 70s, except it can't be because
Correct,
of
because
various
of
things.
Everything that happens, yeah.
Well, for me, it's the main issue is the car we see him driving at first.
Yeah.
It's an 80s era Mustang convertible. But then when he goes to see his boss,
yeah,
AD Dawes or whatever, which footnote on Dawes.
I know. I was like, Dawes? I had to look it up and be like, wait, was he making a reference to him being Cherokee, or was he? Because the Dawes roll, like that's like a roll of like the Dawes. It's like
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we?
Yes. Sorry. Dawes footnote on Dawes.
There's a picture of Nixon on the wall, and as we know from the X-Files,
Right. I was gonna say
every FBI office has to have, I guess, a framed photo of the current president.
Yeah.
So that's confusing.
I know.
So anyway, that's all I want to say about that.
I guess I kind of appreciate that it was a little bit ambiguous,
Right.
in how it, did that, but like, yeah, there was no. It didn't seem like it was set in the past.
Right.
But it also didn't seem like it wasn't, which is confusing. Also, the guns, I feel like the guns maybe weren't 70s guns, like the automatic weapons, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think they reference anything to...
Yeah, that's fair.
Because it's like M16 and M1s, and those were...
Yeah.
M16s were in use in World War II, I think, so...
Okay.
M1s, I don't know. So... there's the Dawes Act, which is named after Senator Henry Dawes of Massachusetts. Authorized the President of the United States to subdivide Native American tribal communal land holdings into allotments for Native American heads of families and individuals. This would convert traditional systems of land tenure into government-imposed system of private property by affording natives to, quote, assume a capitalist and proprietary relationship with property, end quote, that did not previously exist in their cultures. Before private property could be dispensed, the government had to determine, quote, which Indians were eligible, end quote, for allotments, which propelled an, quote, official search for a federal definition of Indianness.
So it ended up to where if you were on the Dawes, I think, like roll, like if you were enrolled in the Dawes Act or whatever, I don't know how to pronounce it, or I don't know how to phrase it correctly. This is essentially, if I'm not mistaken, this is essentially where the whole my great grandmother was an Indian princess thing came in, because if you were able to say like, oh, my grandma was an Indian princess, or my grandma was, an Indian,
you could get a parcel of land.
You could get land. So a lot of white people started claiming indigeneity to get land, basically, which is, and then they were enrolled so that, it shows that they're indigenous on paper, essentially, which is another thing why, like, government enrollment is not always the way that you want to go.
Right.
Citizenship, enrollment, things like that. Like it can be tricky. Like, yes, I am enrolled. Yes, I am a tribal member. But it is also like I have a tribal card, I have a tribal number, all this stuff. But that's tricky because that's also like government issue, sort of like it's a whole thing, and it's like a way to keep track of us that's very, colonial, very Western, very not indigenous, and so it's problematic, but yeah. It was confusing when they were like Dawes, and I was like, is he making a Cherokee joke?
Well, I think it's an intentional reference to that one senator helped to.
Yeah.
In 1898, Congress passed the Curtis Act, which provided that a new roll would be taken and supersede all previous rolls. Difficulties in enumerating the population included the forced migrations of the period, as well as the American Civil War. Additionally, non-native census takers introduced the idea of blood quantum, a concept previously foreign to the tribal communities. Those recording this percentage of ancestry wrote down an estimation based on physical appearance and personal opinion if the individual was present.
Oh my God. Personal opinion.
Well, I think that means...
Yeah. In my personal opinion, I think my great-great-grandmother was an Indian princess.
Tribal citizens were listed under several categories. Citizen by blood, citizen by marriage, freedmen, Delaware Indians. Those adopted by the Cherokee tribe were enrolled as separate group within the Cherokee.
What you read?
Well, I heard not too long ago, I listened to an interview with Zahn McLaren, who is Lakota Sioux himself. And he said that Sioux is considered derogatory.
Okay.
Which I was just reading about, trying to look up. And it is an exonym, meaning it's a name given outside of, from outside. It seems like it's the similar thing as like Iroquois, and why that's now the people who were identified as Iroquois say, don't call us that, is because it's an exonym, which means, and seemingly both the same origins. It's like another native group had a term for those people that like compared them to like snakes or something that crawls on the ground.
Yeah. Wow. Jeez.
I guess that was a popular insult amongst.
Jeez. Yeah, I guess so it's is it Lakota then, or?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there's many different nations under Lakota.
Okay.
And I don't know what to say. I don't know what you say instead of Sioux. I think Ogallala.
Okay, Ogallala. Okay.
Lakota.
Also, I want to know the history of, not the history, but, oh man, Lakota Man on Twitter. Like, natives fucking hate that dude. They fucking can't stand him. And he is not, and they mock him all the time. And I don't know what specifically he's done, and I want to know specifics because I want to be in on it too. But like, it's so funny to see them mock Lakota Man. But yeah, if you're like a white person and you follow Lakota Man, or you are like, yeah, this dude is where I get all my native news, don't do that.
Okay.
And also, I'm gonna say this: if you're white and you follow one person.
Yeah, right.
Of any demographic, and you're like, this
and
is how of any demographic, yeah. And you're like, this is how I get all of my information. Don't do that. You need to spread it out a little bit. You need to actually like expecting all of your, like expecting every single, like if you follow Sean King, if you're like, this is how I get my black news, guess what? Nope. Absolutely. You don't. No, absolutely not. Don't do that. Don't follow Lakota Man. Don't listen. Like,
what about what's his name? Warrior?
Modern Warrior. Don't follow Modern Warrior. And like Modern Warrior, I mean, I think Lakota Man might actually, like, I think he's actually indigenous, but he's like, not great. Modern Warrior 2 is like one that like, he's problematic. He's, like, he's kind of an asshole and natives aren't super happy with him, but it doesn't mean that they're not native. It doesn't mean that they're not indigenous. It just means that like, it's not a monolith. We're not all perfect. And yeah, but yeah, it's a, yeah. Anyway.
This is from Wikipedia. So,
Okay.
Many Ogallala reject the term Sioux due to the hypothesis, among other possible theories, that its origin may be a derogatory word meaning snake in the language of Ojibwe, who were amongst historical enemies of Lakota.
Ah, interesting.
They are also known as Ogallala Lakota Oyate.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It doesn't give any context other than for that.
Yeah. I think I would recommend this movie personally, if for nothing else than Graham Greene flipping the bird every time he drives past any. Also, yeah, it was like really interesting the things that they do, like the way that, like, I started getting kind of interested in it, the way that they sort of portray like the more official government aspects of it, even within the tribe, like how they're going with guns and like going through a classroom and shit like that, and they're like going through schools and just like wrecking it, and they're like
the goons, right?
Yeah, and they're just like
apparently that is factual too, that
yeah,
the goons were provided weapons, like automatic weapons from U.S. government.
Right, exactly. And it's like, but it's like the idea that like the problem and the way that it's presented is like, oh, you just need to, like this won't be a problem if you just like, like are obedient, let us go through, and it's that thing of like, when someone has a fucking automatic weapon on you, like, what is polite?
Correct.
Like, how do, like, someone's like, you need to, like, be respectful right now so that you don't get shot. And it's like, where's that line then? Like, I'm afraid. Like, or if I'm, like, there's that thing of, like, and it has to do with, like, cops and government and, like, that sort of, like, if once you have, like, a specific, once you have power, then your perception of what is disrespectful, your perception of what is obedient is different.
Right.
And you'll see someone being afraid or not knowing what to do. You'll take that as disrespect. You'll take that as disobedience. You'll take that in a way, and then
because your power is not earned. It's not legitimate. Yeah. It is forced.
Yes.
And oppressive, and so any challenge to it.
And the only way you keep and the only way you keep it is
terrorism.
Yeah, is to keep intimidating people.
Right. Yes, sir. I thought excellent performances actually from everybody.
Yeah. Oh my god. Truly,
distracting to me it does do some Hollywood tropes that we're all familiar with. There are too many like hawk calls to keep track of.
Comedic.
It was comedic. It was distracting.
Every time they were like alone in the background.
And in other bird sounds, there was another bird sound, the one that would like pan.
Yeah.
Right to left. That happened a few times. Deer showing up at Yeah,
that's what I was saying about like there's some
the fucking
mysticism.
owl.
Yeah, there was some mysticism in there that was like really like, and again, like we were saying, like for it being like trying to be like a factual, like a telling of like a factual event, like it's a fictionalized version of a factual event, but it's like based in facts. Like, why are you doing this thing where you're like, and then the magic vision came?
I mean, I imagine this is
also, like, I just want to say this. You stop doing the thing where someone gets connected to their indigeneity once they start having visions and like they start, like seeing the future or like all this. Stop. That's not what reconnecting is. That's not what it is. Like, if you literally have no concept of what reconnecting is, just shut up and don't talk about it.
Well,
like,
I do
off.
like a guy waits his whole life for a vision.
No, that was funny.
It's just a dream.
Who the hell are you, man?
What do you mean?
You had yourself a vision. Man waits a long time to have a vision. Might go his whole lifetime and never have one. And along comes some instant Indian with a fucking Rolex and a brand new pair of shoes. Goddamn FBI to top it all off has himself a vision.
Sorry.
But it was funny because it was fucking Graham Greene saying it.
God, he's so good.
He is good.
I want to see everything he's done.
I know. Yeah.
I read a little thing where it was like a revisiting, like, I don't know. I don't remember when it was from, like in the last 20 years, but asking him about working on it. And he was like, oh, I had a blast. It's like, I'm from Canada, so it's not my...
Yeah, right.
It's not my people. It's not my politics, but...
Yeah.
I had a blast working on the movie. So,
yeah.
Special cameos in this movie. Honorable mention performances by David Crosby,
who comes on just to say the N-word.
Yep. And
Not
that
kidding.
badger.
Oh my God. Yeah. Badger. Like, amazing. Yeah. That badger deserves an award. David Crosby, yeah. He literally like is on the screen. Keith made a joke and said like, is that bartender David Crosby?
I wasn't entirely joking.
And I was like, oh my God, right? And then when he ran out with the shotgun and then said the N-word, I was like, that's him. I know that's him. You were like, remember when he used to be on Roseanne? I'm like, it has to be him. It fucking has to be. And it was him. I can't imagine having just a cameo role and being like, hey, we need you to say a derogatory word about Native Americans that includes a derogatory word for Black people. Okay? Great. Yes. I would love to do that. That sounds like the opportunity of a fucking lifetime. Thank you.
I guess he was only in one episode of Roseanne.
Oh, okay.
I think he was played himself.
Oh, interesting. That wouldn't surprise me. Remember when Roseanne was good?
Yeah.
For a short while. Yeah, for a short while. Yeah. I had fun. This is the last. What was your favorite of the Native November? Powwow Highway?
Yeah, again, Atanajawat was in a class of itself.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
I can't imagine we would have watched it otherwise without the constraints. So I'm glad for that.
Sure. Yeah, same.
And probably same with Powwow Highway. Powwow Highway definitely a favorite of the like U.S. produced Hollywood style movies. Thunderheart.
Yeah, definitely not. I don't think there was
better
any,
than I thought it was.
I don't think there was for me. I don't think there was any losers in this one. I don't think I didn't like any of them. I think they all I'm glad I watched.
I'll be honest, Smoke Signals did the least for me.
I knew you were gonna say. Well, I'd never watched it before, so I finally got to So I'm like, okay, cool. I watched this movie.
There's things about it I loved.
Yeah.
I mean, Thomas by himself is enough. And the scene with Elaine Miles driving backwards.
Oh yeah, but that's what I mean. Like I don't. Yeah, like watching there was nothing that I was like, oh, I wish we hadn't watched that, or like, oh, that was a pooper.
No, yeah. My problems with it overall are as as a film. Like
Yeah.
I the things I enjoyed about it are the same things I enjoyed about Powwow Highway, where you get insights
Correct. Yeah.
into the culture, and it's not really, shit isn't explained to you. It doesn't do what Thunderheart does.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
It avoids those tropes and then just
Yeah.
shows you
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
slices of life.
I think Powwow Highway is probably my favorite out of all of them, just because I think it went the hardest for being like also being the lightest, and
story
also
in a
like
way. Yeah.
also having like mysticism and stuff, but like it really did not, like, it had a lot of things in it, but like none of it was that tropey sort of like jokey, I saw an eagle fly by. It's like someone looking for signs, and like, like the signs that he finds are signs he's looking for. So it's like,
Yeah.
and it's like, I felt like it was so good in how like it made it like self-contained. It's nothing that someone else is going to point out to him. It's nothing that someone else is going to see. It's all his own beliefs, his own feelings, his own, and his own attempt to find his connection and find his people and find his medicine and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And in that, it's all his own personal journey, and I feel like they did a really good job of showing that and displaying that and talking about, like struggles and real things without making it super heavy or super boring. And so I think Powwow Highway wins for me.
Nice.
For like all these movies, because I feel like it did the thing that other than like we were saying, Atanajwat is its own movie. Like that, yeah. I'm not even including that in this. Like that's its own movie. Right. It did something completely different, But yeah, I feel like Powwow Highway did a lot of the things that everything else was trying to do without making it seem like it was a trope.
Right. Yeah.
Which was really, I think, for having never heard of it before, for having for the tiny movie that it was, and for it being in the 80s and all this shit, right. Like, great job. It was the earliest of all of these movies that we watched, and it did it went the hardest. It was the most like accurate, and I mean, as far as like factually speaking, in the sense of like talking about Leonard Peltier and having actual like references to AIM and Vietnam War and all that stuff, like So yeah, like it didn't. I think that's what, when I was like, it was actually it's actually the logo. It's actually AIM. I was expecting, because like Thunderheart does ARM, and that's how I was kind of like expecting it to be. Like it was going to be like, this is our version of what it actually was, because we can't really say it. We can't really do it. We don't want to give publicity to these people, kind of thing. So I was like, oh my God, they're really saying it. They're really talking about it. They're really doing it. And I think that was probably the most like surprising.
Yeah. Agree.
But yeah. We're gonna do some movies in December. We haven't hammered out the movie.
Oh, I wanted to say
okay.
In the lobby I talked about an image I thought I had from this movie.
Yeah.
And I think it is when Trudell's character first runs, which is so fucking hot when he jumps off the car.
Oh my God. Oh my God. He's like, his handcuffs are behind his back, and he like does a running jump off a car and
jumps through his arms.
Like hoops his, oh my God.
And then finds a gun.
Oh my God. It's so, I was like, oh my God. I hope I'm not supposed to not like this dude, because he's the baddest ass of everyone in this movie. And like, it doesn't get undone. He has a fucking like,
badass haircut.
The fucking haircut. Oh my God. That dude's a bad fucking ass. And his character is
so
like,
good.
I was like, hell yes. And I was like, are we supposed to think this guy's a bad guy? Because this guy's a fucking badass. He's not a bad guy. He's a bad ass.
Yeah, I will say, I think, because of how they set up, how the FBI, the tone of it is set up as, they're outsiders and whatnot. I don't feel at any point that any of the folks on the reservation look bad or that you are
Agree.
meant to see
Yeah.
them as.
That's what I was saying about the beginning when I was like the FBI. I'm like, wow, the stuff they're saying. I was like, I feel gross about it. So if they're supposed to be the good guys, and it was like that was a confusing thing because I didn't. I was like, I wasn't sure. I was like, are we gonna think? Is this gonna be a propaganda movie? And a little bit, but like yeah, it wasn't. It didn't really do the thing that I was expecting it to do. So I kept being like, are we supposed to not like them?
I mean, that's the thing, like that I wish, like you were saying, like, you're not, they don't really name genocide or.
Yeah. Right.
And I like, it would have been great if the Lavoie character had not only, had some visions and started to empathize.
Yeah. Right.
But also have an actual more explicit, like, no, I can't continue to be an agent of this.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's one of those things where it
says it doesn't say it.
It doesn't
but
contextualize it in the history of the United States. It's just like, you can, if you want, chalk it up to like, some bad agents, some corrupt tribal council people, like over a decade or whatever, like somebody, so I missed opportunity there. Like I wish it could have, but yeah.
Overall,
but
I enjoyed it. I actually
there's a
enjoyed
lot
it,
here. There's a lot to unpack and a lot to talk about with this movie.
And I do think, I think like the interesting thing is like, again, if you're unfamiliar with anything, I think like it is a good jumping off point.
Right.
Of like, because if you're like, oh, what are the actual events of this movie? And then you're going to go on a whole journey and find out about, Wounded Knee and shit like that. So definitely.
I definitely, after this month especially, I want to read up and learn more about AIM and
for sure.
Second Wounded Knee and Peltier and whatnot.
Yeah. Also, like, hey, if you're unaware, like Leonard Peltier is in prison.
Has been since 1977.
And if you definitely look him up and look up ways to like offer support, get him out of jail. He does not need to be in there. He shouldn't have been in there. He should not have been in there all this time. It's been so many years. If you're like, what's something I can do? You can just fucking sign a petition or something. Like, just go.
White people love a petition.
It's true. And just like, I don't know, just look it up and talk about him, Yeah,
I'll try to find some links. I put a link to, I think, what I could find as the most recent campaign for him.
I believe it's on the link tree that we have on our...
Oh, yeah? Nice.
Yeah. If you go to our Instagram or whatever, our link tree is right there. I think in Twitter too, and maybe I'm not sure about Facebook. I don't know, but you can. Yeah, I put some stuff. I think I linked to like AIM and Leonard Peltier. So yeah, if you're like, I don't even know what to look up, we made it easy for you.
We try.
Yeah. So yeah,
thanks for being here. Thanks for going here on this journey with it.
Yeah.
On this vision quest.
Fuck off.
Listen to the skies. Listen to the sound. Something on the land. Something going down. Down pressers speeding by life. Fever's heart. Burning rivers to cross. Walls of Babylon, material noise, thinking they've touched the moon. Freedom takes a rocket blast. Just another day, like yesterday. Rocking my heart, rocking the res. Woman like you, times like this, all that's real connects to you. Happy medicine, making me smile, seeing you laugh. Getting so near, rocking our hearts, rocking the res.